There seems to be two intriguing contradictions in society today. There are those who want to live forever, and there are those who don't want to live at all. There are those who are terrified to die, and those who are terrified to live. In the first group, according to a New York Times article in the field of longevity and anti-aging, some scientists for years have been trying to avoid death, and they have conducted experiments on themselves, like taking multi-day fasts, dosing themselves with the diabetes medicine metformin, or drinking milk laced with high doses of vitamin B, all to defend against aging. So how has it worked? Well, so far not so good. Researcher Roy Walford stuck to a 1,600 a day calorie diet. In the 1980s, he wrote the book, The 120-Year Diet. And then he followed it up a year later with Beyond the 120-Year Diet. He became a figure to thousands who hoped to live past 100. Well, he died at the age of 79. Some of the biggest names in dieting and organic agriculture and preventive medicine died at surprisingly young ages. The wild foods enthusiast Euell Gibbons was far ahead of his time in his advocacy of a diverse plant diet. He died at the age of 64 of an aortic aneurysm. The nutritionist Adele Davis helped wake millions of people to the dangers of refined foods like white bread, but she died at 70 of cancer. Nathan Pritkin, one of the foremost champions of a low-fat diet, died at 69, nearly the same age as Dr. Robert Atkins, who believed in the opposite regime. Then there is Jerome Rodale. Now, Jerome Rodale founded the publishing empire that was dedicated to health. In 1971, Dick Cavett invited Mr. Rodale onto his TV show because Rodale had been hailed as the guru of the organic food cult. Mr. Rodale was 72. He took his chair next to Mr. Cavett. He proclaimed that he would live to be 100. Then he made a snoring sound and he died. Now, the show was being taped, so it never aired. So much for our desire to want to live forever. Now, the second group is even more tragic than the first. In the past few weeks, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain committed suicide. And throughout the years, many people that we thought had it all have committed suicide, from Ernest Hemingway to Robin Williams. And it's so very interesting that last year the Institutes of Health spent more money researching dietary supplements than it did on suicide prevention. It's also extremely alarming that in the past few years, the suicide rate in our nation has increased 25%. So I wonder if this sobering statistic should challenge us as Christian Catholic believers to put more energy into figuring out how to live well rather than how to live forever. I wonder if this sobering statistic should challenge us as Christian Catholic believers to strengthen our faith so that we can share our faith in God and in life and be vehicles responding to the hopelessness, the despair, the depression, the mental health issues that lead so many people to not want to live. I wonder if this sobering statistic should challenge each one of us to work to eliminate the stigma that surrounds depression and suicide, and see mental health issues in the same context that we see physical health issues. Nothing to be ashamed of. Paul, in that second reading, as he writes to the Corinthians, he challenges all of us today to excel in love for one another. He tells us in that reading that what Jesus was rich in, compassion and empathy, he used that richness to bolster those who were struggling with life. He tells us that our abundance at the present time should supply the needs of those who don't have an abundance. And it's not just money. It might be an abundance of purpose or an abundance of meaning. That we all have something to offer one another. When we are strong in faith and strong in our purpose in life and our meaning in life, we are challenged to be present to those whose faith is weak, who are struggling how to cope with their meaning or their purpose in life. As Christian Catholic believers, we are all called to walk with people who are struggling to find meaning in their lives, to walk with people who are despairing due to the loss of a loved one, or the loss of a job, or financial difficulty, or simply genetic depression. Now, in the gospel that we just heard, Jesus says to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, have faith." Yes, faith is extremely important. But it's so interesting that psychologists are telling us today that what's happening in our culture is that there is an existential crisis of meaninglessness. It's overwhelming our culture. And they're telling us that the rise in suicide is also due to this crisis of meaninglessness. And they're telling us that it's brought about by a number of different reasons. Greater detachment and a weaker sense of belonging, the decline of neighborliness, the shrinking of the family, and most interesting, these psychologists are saying to us that the diminishing role of religion is also part of this rise in suicides. Clay Rutledge is a professor of psychology at Vanderbilt. He tells us that these changes pose serious threats to a life of meaning. And he goes on to talk about religion. And he says, religion, which once provided the institutional and social scaffolding for a life of meaning, is in steep decline. Rutledge tells us that the sense of meaningfulness that once was provided by religion is not easily replicated in the non-religious sphere. So we cannot simply say to someone, have faith, since so many don't have faith today. Nor can we say, oh, snap out of your depression. It's just not that easy. When people are depressed or in despair, their faith can be such a tremendous struggle. It's human and it's normal. They just can't snap out of it by telling them to pray. This is when we are called to walk with them on their journey. This is when we are called to strengthen our faith, our sense of belonging in a community, in order to bolster their weak faith and perhaps invite them into our community, to help them understand that one can find meaning and purpose in life. Depression's an illness that needs treatment. We have to ask ourselves, as we see this happening around us, are we willing to strengthen our own faith, our own meaning, our own purpose in life, and invite others to experience that? So often, it's about presence first. and then words when they're needed. And we cannot do it through email, we cannot do it through texts, we cannot do it through Instagram, because those in themselves are creating this lack of connection. People need our presence, not just our typed words. People need our faith. People need to hear and understand that we do have meaning in life and wish to share it with them. We will probably never totally understand the complex issues that lead people to despair of life and commit suicide. So often it is a cry for help, but so often that cry goes unheard. And we are called, as the Christian Catholic community, to try to listen more carefully to these cries for help that seem to be overwhelming our society. It's also very important for us to get beyond the stigma attached to depression and suicide. You know, it's very, very sad that for so long that we thought suicide meant a sure path to hell. Well, let's wake up. Our God understands so much more than we ever can or will the pain that his creation goes through. And our God is overwhelmingly merciful, so much more than we can possibly ever understand or imagine. So let us not spend so much energy trying to live forever. Let's try to live well today. Bolster our faith, bolster our meaning, our purpose in life. Share that with others to help them move from meaninglessness to hope.